The charity gala was in full swing when Eleanor Thompson, founder of the Hope for Kids Foundation, picked up the crayon drawing from the children's art exhibit and froze. There, in childish strokes, were two women in flowing white wedding dresses holding hands under a rainbow arch, and the signature in the corner was unmistakably her own daughter Natalie's. Eleanor's stomach dropped as the noise of the ballroom faded into a dull roar. She had spent 20 years building this foundation into a beacon for at-risk children across New York, pouring every dollar and every ounce of her reputation into programs that taught kids hope through art and education. Now this simple sheet of construction paper threatened to burn it all down. Natalie, her only child, the poised 28-year-old director of youth programs who smiled for every donor photo, had drawn herself, long dark hair, sharp cheekbones, standing beside another woman in a veil. Joanna. The name hit Eleanor like a slap. She had met Joanna once at a staff mixer, an up-and-coming artist who volunteered with the kids, all soft blonde waves and quiet confidence. At the time Eleanor had thought nothing of it. Now the pieces clicked into place with brutal clarity. She shoved the drawing into her clutch and marched through the crowd, heels clicking like gunshots. Natalie stood near the champagne tower laughing politely with a board member. Her dark hair swept into a perfect chignon, the emerald gown Eleanor had bought her for the occasion hugging her frame. When Natalie saw her mother's face, the smile died instantly. "Mom, what's wrong?" Natalie whispered, pulling her aside into the quiet corridor behind the stage. Eleanor didn't speak. She simply thrust the drawing into Natalie's hands. The younger woman's fingers trembled as she recognized her own childhood signature style, the way she still doodled when nervous. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for anyone to see it. It was just something I sketched for the kids' exhibit last week. I thought it got mixed in." "You drew yourself marrying a woman," Eleanor hissed, voice low but shaking with fury. "Joanna, don't lie to me, Natalie. How long has this been going on?" Natalie swallowed hard, the weight of years of secrecy crashing down in seconds. 2 years. "Mom, I love her. She's not just anyone. She's the one who makes me feel like I can breathe for the first time in my life." The words landed like grenades. Eleanor pressed a hand to her temple, mind racing through every donor dinner, every interview where she had proudly called Natalie the future of the foundation. "This cannot get out. Do you understand what this would do to us? The conservative donors, the grants from faith-based groups, they would pull everything. Your career, my life's work, gone because of a crayon picture." Natalie stepped back, clutching the drawing to her chest as if it were armor. "I'm not a child anymore, Mom. I won't hide forever." But even as she said it, fear flickered in her eyes. She knew the stakes. The foundation had just survived a messy audit. One more scandal and the whole house of cards would collapse. Down the hall, Joanna waited in the green room, unaware that her entire world was about to shift. She checked her phone for the 10th time, smiling at the text Natalie had sent earlier. "Can't wait to dance with you later, discreetly of course." Joanna's heart still raced every time she thought of Natalie, the way her laugh filled a room, the quiet strength that had pulled Joanna through her own rough childhood in foster care. Their love had started innocently enough at a volunteer training session. Stolen glances turning into late-night coffees, then nights spent talking until dawn in Joanna's tiny Brooklyn studio. They had agreed to keep it quiet for Natalie's sake, for the foundation's sake. Now Joanna wondered if that silence had become a cage. When Natalie finally slipped into the green room, face pale, Joanna knew immediately. "She found it, didn't she?" Natalie nodded, sinking onto the couch. "She wants me to end it. Tonight." Joanna reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of 2 years of practice. "Then we fight. Or we run. But we don't let her decide for us." The words sounded brave, but both women felt the ground cracking beneath them. Outside, the gala continued, oblivious to the war that had just begun inside these walls. Eleanor, meanwhile, stood alone on the balcony overlooking Manhattan, the drawing crumpled in her fist. She had built an empire on helping children find their voices. Now her own daughter's voice, the truth she had buried, threatened to silence everything. She dialed her lawyer with shaking hands. Damage control had to start immediately. But deep down Eleanor knew some truths refused to stay buried. The next morning the first crack appeared. A junior staffer who had seen Eleanor storm out with the drawing posted a vague tweet about secrets at Hope for Kids. It gained only 50 likes by breakfast, but Natalie stared at her phone in horror as she sat across from Joanna in their favorite hidden cafe in Williamsburg. "It's starting," she whispered. Joanna squeezed her knee under the table, the small gesture the only comfort they dared allow in public. By noon Eleanor had called an emergency family meeting at her Upper East Side townhouse. Natalie arrived alone, per her mother's strict instructions. Joanna waited 3 blocks away in a cab, heart pounding. Inside the elegant living room Eleanor laid out the plan like a general. Natalie would publicly date a suitable man, Eleanor's choice, the son of a major donor, for 6 months. The foundation would quietly shift focus away from controversial art programs. And Joanna would be asked to resign her volunteer position. "I won't do it," Natalie said quietly, but her voice cracked. Eleanor slammed a folder on the table. Financial statements showing how close they were to losing 3 major grants. "Then watch everything I sacrifice for you disappear. Is that what you want for the children we serve?" The guilt hit Natalie like a wave. She had grown up watching her mother work 80-hour weeks after her father left, building the foundation from nothing. Protecting it felt like protecting her mother's heart. Yet walking away from Joanna felt like ripping out her own. That night in Joanna's studio, surrounded by half-finished canvases, Natalie cried for the first time in years. Joanna held her close, stroking her hair. "We always knew this day might come. The question is, what kind of life do we want? One where we hide, or one where we stand?" Natalie looked up, eyes red. "I don't know if I can choose." Outside, the first paparazzi van parked across the street. The storm was no longer coming. It had arrived. By the following afternoon, the vague tweet had exploded into a full-blown media frenzy. Someone, Eleanor suspected the same junior staffer, had leaked a blurry photo of the drawing itself, captioned, "Is Hope for Kids hiding more than just art?" The tabloids ran with it. "Charity heiress secret lesbian sketch rocks foundation." Natalie watched the headlines scroll across her laptop in the foundation's sleek midtown office, her coffee growing cold. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Board members, donors, even old college friends. Joanna texted from her studio. "They're outside my building. Stay inside. I love you." Natalie wanted to run to her, to hold her and promise everything would be okay, but Eleanor had already scheduled a damage control press conference for that evening. The foundation's PR team worked frantically, drafting statements about artistic expression and supporting all families. But the damage was spreading. 3 major donors called to withdraw 6-figure pledges, citing family values. The New York Post ran a front-page photo of Natalie and Joanna laughing together at last year's volunteer picnic. Someone had dug it up from social media archives. Eleanor stormed into Natalie's office at 3 o'clock, face tight with exhaustion. The lawsuit threat came this morning. A conservative donor group is preparing papers claiming we misrepresented our mission. If this continues, we lose the building, the programs, everything. She dropped a thick legal file on the desk. "They want your resignation unless you publicly denounce the relationship." Natalie stared at her mother, the woman who had raised her alone, who had taught her that silence sometimes saved lives. "Denounce Joanna? I can't." "You can and you will if you care about the kids who depend on us," Eleanor snapped. For the first time, Natalie saw real fear in her mother's eyes. Not anger, but terror of losing the only thing that had given her purpose after her divorce. That evening, the press conference turned into a circus. Cameras flashed as Natalie stood at the podium in a conservative navy suit, Eleanor at her side like a sentinel. The drawing was simply a child's creative exercise. Natalie read from the script, voice steady but hollow. "The foundation remains committed to every child regardless of background." But when a reporter shouted, "Is it true you're in a relationship with Joanna Hayes?" Natalie froze. The room went silent. She could feel Joanna watching the live stream from her studio, waiting for the answer that would either free them or condemn them. I won't comment on my personal life," she finally said, the words tasting like ash. The backlash was immediate. Social media split down the middle, some praising her privacy, others calling her a coward. Joanna texted a single heart emoji, but Natalie knew the silence between them had just grown louder. Later that night they met in secret at a small park near the East River. bundled in coats against the October chill. Joanna's blonde hair whipped in the wind as she pulled Natalie into her arms. "You didn't deny us. That's something." "But I didn't confirm us either," Natalie whispered, burying her face in Joanna's shoulder. The scent of paint and lavender calmed her for a moment. "Mom says if I come out now, the foundation folds by Christmas. Lawsuits, lost funding. The kids lose their after-school programs, their art therapy. How do I live with that?" Joanna pulled back, cupping Natalie's face. "And how do you live with waking up every day pretending I'm not the love of your life? We've hidden for 2 years, Nat. Every dinner where I sat 3 seats away. Every holiday I spent alone because your mother couldn't know. I'm tired of being your secret." The words stung because they were true. Natalie had always been the careful one, the planner, the one who weighed every risk. Joanna was the fire, the artist who painted their future in bold colors. Their differences had once felt perfect. Now they felt like cracks widening under pressure. A flashbulb popped from across the park. Someone had followed them. They broke apart instantly, but the damage was done. By morning the photo was everywhere. Lesbian couple caught in secret midnight meeting. Foundation heiress defies mother. Eleanor called at dawn. "You have until Friday to fix this. Or I will." The line went dead. Natalie sat on her bed staring at the ceiling, the weight of every decision pressing down like stones. Protect the foundation her mother had bled for, or protect the woman who made her feel alive. The choice no longer felt theoretical. It felt like choosing which part of herself to kill. Joanna, alone in her studio, painted through the night. A canvas of 2 brides standing on a crumbling bridge, storm clouds gathering. She didn't know if the bridge would hold. She only knew she refused to let go of Natalie's hand. The lawsuit landed on Wednesday like a bomb. A prominent donor group filed papers in federal court, alleging the foundation had knowingly promoted lifestyles contrary to its founding charter. The complaint specifically named Natalie and Joanna, demanding an audit and the removal of both from any leadership roles. News vans camped outside the foundation's building and Joanna's studio. Natalie canceled all her meetings and locked herself in her office, scrolling through the hate comments that flooded the foundation's social channels. Her assistant knocked softly. "Miss Thompson, your mother wants to see you in the boardroom. Now." Eleanor waited with the entire executive team, faces grim. "The board voted this morning. They want you on administrative leave until this blows over. And they strongly suggest you issue a statement distancing yourself from Joanna." Natalie laughed bitterly. "Distancing? She's not a disease, Mom. She's the person I want to spend my life with." One board member cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Natalie, the optics are killing us. We've already lost 2 corporate sponsors. If the audit finds irregularities, and they will dig, we could face criminal charges." The room spun. Natalie realized with horrifying clarity that her love had become a liability, not just for her mother, but for every employee whose mortgage depended on the foundation's survival. She thought of the little girl in the Bronx who had started speaking again because of the art therapy program Joanna helped design. Was one relationship worth all those futures? That afternoon she met Joanna at a nondescript diner in Queens where no one would recognize them. Joanna looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but her smile when she saw Natalie was still the brightest thing in the room. They ordered coffee and held hands under the table like teenagers. "I can't ask you to destroy your mother's legacy," Joanna said quietly. "But I also can't keep pretending this is sustainable. Every time we hide, we lose a piece of ourselves." Natalie stared into her coffee. "What if I quit? Walk away from the foundation completely?" Joanna's eyes widened. "You'd hate yourself in 6 months. That place is part of who you are." The truth hurt. Natalie had poured her soul into those programs, believing she could change lives the way her mother had changed hers after their father abandoned them. Leaving felt like betrayal. Staying felt like betrayal of Joanna. Outside the diner, a reporter spotted them through the window. Cameras flashed. They fled out the back alley, hearts racing, but the video went viral within hours. Secret lesbian couple on the run, foundation heiress caught in emotional meeting. Eleanor was waiting when Natalie finally returned to her apartment that night. "I never thought I'd have to say this to my own daughter," she said, voice breaking for the first time. "But if you choose her over everything we've built, I don't know if I can forgive you." The words landed harder than any headline. Natalie stood frozen as her mother walked out, the door closing with terrifying finality. Alone, Natalie called Joanna. "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Joanna's voice was steady. "Then let's stop hiding. Come out publicly. Together. Whatever happens, we face it side by side." The offer was everything Natalie had once dreamed of. Yet the image of empty classrooms and children losing their safe space haunted her. She hung up without answering, tears streaming down her face. For the first time she understood the true cost of courage. It wasn't just her own life on the line. It was everyone else's too. The accident happened on Friday morning. A paparazzi car swerved too close while chasing Joanna's taxi to a gallery opening, where she had been invited to speak about youth art programs. The cab clipped a delivery truck and flipped. Joanna was rushed to Mount Sinai with a concussion and broken wrist. When Natalie got the call, she was in the middle of a board meeting. She ran out without a word, ignoring her mother's shouts. At the hospital, she pushed past security to Joanna's room. The sight of Joanna pale against the white sheets, wrist in a cast, broke something inside her. "This is my fault," Natalie whispered, climbing carefully onto the bed and holding her uninjured hand. "If I had just stayed quiet." Joanna managed a weak smile. "No. This is the world's fault for thinking our love is news. Not ours." Doctors said she would recover fully, but the incident ignited fresh outrage. Social media trended justice for Joanna and protect lesbian love, while conservative outlets blamed reckless behavior. The foundation's stock, if a nonprofit could be said to have one, plummeted. Eleanor arrived at the hospital an hour later, face drawn. She looked at the two women holding hands, and for a moment her expression softened. "I almost lost you both today," she said quietly. "The lawsuit is being dropped if we issue a joint statement that the relationship is over." Natalie shook her head. "No more deals, Mom. No more hiding." Eleanor stared at her daughter for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. That night, back in Joanna's hospital room, they made their decision. Natalie posted a single photo on her personal Instagram. The two of them in the hospital bed, Joanna's cast signed with tiny hearts, caption reading simply, "Her name is Joanna. I love her. And I'm done hiding." The post went viral before they even finished reading the comments. The next 48 hours were chaos. The foundation board called an emergency session. Donors flooded the phones. Eleanor issued her own statement supporting all forms of love, but stopped short of endorsing the relationship. Natalie knew it was the best her mother could do. Yet the real battle was just beginning. The press conference Natalie called herself was packed. She stood at the podium in the same navy suit from before, but this time Joanna stood beside her, cast and all, their hands openly clasped. Cameras flashed like fireworks. "I have spent 2 years loving this woman in secret because I was afraid of what it would cost the foundation my mother built," Natalie said, voice clear and strong. "But love isn't something you hide when it gets hard. The children we serve deserve to see that courage matters more than optics. Today I choose truth." The room erupted. Questions flew. Eleanor watched from the back, arms crossed, tears in her eyes that only Natalie could see. Afterward, the consequences rained down. 2 major grants were revoked. The foundation lost its headquarters lease. Staff layoffs were announced for the following month. Natalie tendered her resignation that afternoon, effective immediately. Joanna held her that night in the studio as Natalie cried for everything she had lost. "I don't regret it," Natalie whispered. "But it hurts." Joanna kissed her forehead. "We're still here. That's what matters." Yet the strain showed. Arguments flared over money, over where they would live, over whether Natalie should fight to keep some role at the foundation. The pressure that had once united them now threatened to pull them apart. One night Joanna snapped, "I never asked you to burn your life down for me." Natalie shot back, "And I never asked you to become the reason my mother can't look at me." They slept on opposite sides of the bed for the first time in 2 years. Eleanor called the next morning. "The foundation is restructuring. We're smaller, but we're surviving. And I want you to come home for Thanksgiving. Both of you." The invitation felt like a lifeline and a landmine at once. Natalie looked at Joanna across the kitchen table. "What do we do?" Joanna took her hand. "We go. Together." No more hiding, remember? Thanksgiving at the townhouse was tense but civil. Eleanor had set 2 extra places. Conversation stayed carefully away from lawsuits and layoffs. When dessert came, Eleanor cleared her throat. I was wrong to ask you to choose between your happiness and my legacy. The foundation will survive because of the values I taught you, including love without conditions. Natalie felt years of weight lift. She reached across the table and squeezed her mother's hand. Joanna smiled softly, the first real smile in weeks. 6 months later, the foundation had stabilized under new leadership. Natalie started her own nonprofit art therapy program with Joanna as creative director. Their first exhibition featured the original two-bride drawing, now framed and titled Courage in Color. Attendance broke records. Standing beside Joanna at the opening, Natalie watched children and parents admire the piece. She turned to the woman she loved. Was it worth it? Joanna kissed her softly, right there in front of everyone. Every single day. But the question lingered in Natalie's mind long after the lights went down. Did Natalie and Joanna make the right choice by choosing truth over silence? Or was the cost too high? What would you have done?